What's going on, guys, and welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for the August 11, 2023 episode. I am Graham G. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. Man, I love this show. I really did think this was a great edition of SmackDown on Friday night. Didn't do a SmackDown audio review last week, no Collision review either. I was obviously in Detroit for SmackDown, or not SmackDown, but rather SummerSlam weekend, caught up on all the shows after the fact. I did watch SmackDown Saturday morning, had no chance to review it before the pay-per-view that night. But we are back this week with a loaded review of a very newsworthy edition of SmackDown on Friday. Really, really good show. Not any SmackDown is perfect, but I think WWE did a great job of following up on a good SummerSlam show with a great SmackDown on Friday. I liked Raw on Monday, thought it was a pretty good show, thought SmackDown was even better. Honestly, I think these are the shows that Raw could have if it was a 2-hour show, if they had to limit down on the filler a little bit. But I thought Raw on Monday was a good show. I thought SmackDown was even better tonight. This was great stuff. We got the reshuffling of the deck a little bit, the fallout from the Bloodline angle on SummerSlam, from SummerSlam. A new United States champion crowned, and it's probably not who you think. More on that momentarily. We had a match between AJ Styles and Karrion Kross. LA Knight making an appearance, and speaking of appearances, a surprise appearance from Edge, who I guess was always supposed to be on SmackDown next week in Toronto. They actually showed that in an advertisement before he came out anyway for this show. And I don't think the crowd knew that he was coming out, so I thought that was a cool surprise, setting up a big match for next week's show. Very good SmackDown that kind of kept the simplistic approach, the simple approach, the less is more approach. I mean, we had a handful of matches and segments on the show, but I felt like each match and each segment got an ample amount of time. Not like 30, 40 minutes Bloodline time from MSG a month ago, but like more even, with Edge and Sheamus getting a ton of time in their segment, more on that momentarily. AJ and Kross got a number of minutes, as did Charlotte and Asuka in the opener. The closing segment got a decent amount of time. Theory and his opponent for the United States Championship got an ample amount of time as well. So let's get right into it here. Opening the show with Charlotte Flair versus Asuka. Now, why we couldn't just hear from Damage Control or Io Sky, the new WWE Women's Champion, coming off her title win at SummerSlam last weekend, I don't know. Instead, we had this match. Again, I'm not really sure why we had this match. In storyline, I guess Bianca's still hurt. She was not on the show. We also had an appearance from Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits later on in the show. I just want to mention that now before I forget. Bianca could soon link up with them. I don't think that's coming imminently. I feel like that could come at some point down the road, which I'm completely in favor of, Bianca being with them as like a heel faction, or a tweener faction, I guess, because people are going to cheer them. They attacked 2 babyface teams last week, but it seems like, people are going to cheer for them anyway, because they like Bobby, they like the Profits. Anyway, I just make mention of that because Bianca wasn't on the show. Charlotte and Asuka, the beef wasn't really between them going into SummerSlam. It was really between Charlotte and Bianca. So again, why this match happened, I do not know. We've had a million matches between Charlotte and Asuka over the years. This was another quality contest. They made the most of the time they had, but it ended in dumb fashion. A very stupid finish here with Io, who was already at ringside after coming out halfway through with both Bayley and Dakota Kai. So I thought Dakota Kai's appearance at SummerSlam was a one-off. And it sounded like that, maybe it was a WWE call. It sounded like, from what Dakota said on her Twitch stream or whatever, that it was a Bayley call and that Bayley wanted her there for the big moment. I'm not sure if Triple H said at the last minute, we want Dakota Kai here. I'm not really sure. But she did appear. She was at the post-show press conference and said that she's not remotely close to being cleared for the ring anyway. So maybe she can be there physically. I don't know. It seems like Dakota Kai might be around going forward if she appeared on this show, because she didn't really do anything. So if they're bringing her in for a random SmackDown just to stand there, that makes it seem like to me that she might be around as a manager for the, going forward for the foreseeable future until she's cleared again. But anyway, Charlotte and Asuka ending after interference from Io, who jumped off the ropes, drop kicked both women, match ending in a no contest or whatever it was. A good match, but it's like in storyline, why the fuck would she interfere? Like, who cares? She doesn't like Asuka, she doesn't like Charlotte, she's not cashing in. What was the point of that? Attacking both women, what was the point? So Damage Control standing tall here. Io escaping without getting her comeuppance from Charlotte or Asuka. I really don't know where they go from here with the WWE Women's Championship. I am worried that Io and Charlotte is the immediate direction, and I worry about that because I don't want Charlotte beating her or making Io look weak as champion. It's kind of the Ronda Rousey, Liv Morgan effect. When Liv Morgan became champion last year after cashing in, and then Ronda was her opponent, but Ronda got more over than Liv was. And Liv was very over at that point, but they completely ruined her momentum. And it was one of those things where they wanted to protect Ronda, so they couldn't really make Io, or rather Liv at that point, look strong. I hope that's not the same issue here with Charlotte and Io. I would much rather Io move on to Asuka. That sounds like a WrestleMania-worthy match. I highly, highly doubt Io will still be champion at that point, let alone that being the Mania match for the championship. I mean, they haven't done the match on TV yet. They did it at one house show that I was at, actually, coincidentally enough, in Springfield, Mass. About a year ago. But beyond that, they haven't done the match on TV. And that's obviously done by design, because I feel like they want that to be a big deal when they do it and whatever. So I would do Io and Asuka first, probably a payback, get the women on the show. Charlotte and Bianca could be the non-title feud. Maybe they do Io and Charlotte on SmackDown and Bianca costs Charlotte the championship. I mean, that would be fine. Maybe that's Bianca's heel turn, but I say heel turn, quote unquote, because people would cheer Bianca because they just don't really like Charlotte. Charlotte is inherently over because she's been here forever. People know her. They like her music. She'll get cheered no matter what, whether she's a heel or a face. But I feel like most crowds would probably cheer Bianca over Charlotte. But anyway, this was a weird opening match in the sense that it was a good match. Didn't really need to happen, and the finish sucked. It protected both women, but it just didn't make a lot of sense. But it was a good match, though. Same thing can be said for AJ Styles and Karrion Kross. This was the third match these two have had since May. They had a match before Night of Champions in May. AJ Styles won there. He challenged for the World Heavyweight Championship that Sunday, or Saturday rather, at Night of Champions. So okay, AJ wins as a momentum boost, whatever. They continued the feud a couple of weeks later. They picked up where they left off a couple of weeks later. Karrion lost to AJ at MSG. And people were saying, oh, it was because Karrion was injured, his thigh was wrapped up. He lost in, literally 2 minutes. It was a fucking nothing match. And the guy had his entrance cut. His entrance was cut here, too, but they showed the back half of it. At MSG, I'm not sure if they showed any of it. They might have showed the beginning, but not the back half. I don't remember. They showed the final few moments here. Anyway, with AJ and Kross, they had a good match here. Easily the best of the 3 matches they've had so far. But at the same time, though, Kross lost again. They did an awesome vignette for the guy right beforehand, and he talks up a big game, and he mentioned, having disciples or something. That did not come into play here. I mean, at this point, they desperately need to hit the reset button with Karrion Kross. I like the character. I like Karrion a lot. I don't know how many fans he has left. I'm assuming a handful, but I'm sure I'm far from the only one. The booking of Kross really just bewilders me, because it's not as if they're building up AJ for anything. If they were building up AJ for a championship opportunity against Roman Reigns, then fuck yeah, that sounds awesome. But I don't think Roman's going to be a payback. I don't think Roman's going to be a fast lane. Are they really building up AJ Styles? I mean, the guy couldn't lose one match. I'm not blaming AJ, but they couldn't have AJ lose one match to Karrion Kross, even if it was a fluky win. Kross hasn't beaten the guy at all. He beat Carl Anderson. Okay, who gives a shit? What was the last important match that Karrion Kross won? He's lost to AJ Styles 3 fucking times. He had a brief feud with Shinsuke Nakamura back in April. He lost to him clean. I think it was the week after the draft. He lost to Shinsuke Nakamura, and Nakamura went to Raw anyway. And Karrion Kross lost that feud. He beat Rey Mysterio, but that was in the rematch. He lost their first and more important match right before the Rumble back in January. He lost to Drew McIntyre back in November at Crown Jewel. I mean, the guy just can't fucking win a match to save his life. Has he even had a singles, a single match on pay-per-view since he beat Drew back at Extreme Rules? Again, he had the Crown Jewel match with Drew, and he lost that. He was in the SummerSlam Battle Royal. I don't think we've seen him on pay-per-view otherwise. I guess he was in the Royal Rumble, but again, beyond that, he hasn't had a single important match on the show beyond that stuff. Do they just not care about him? At this point, it's weird, because they build him up, they feature him weekly, and then he just loses. I don't know if the answer is turning him face, which, I mean, he seems like a nice enough guy and whatnot, but the problem there, though, is that SmackDown already has a plethora of baby faces. Now that they've turned to LA Knight, they've got Rey Mysterio, Sheamus, Edge, LA Knight, AJ Styles, among others. They have a lot of baby faces on SmackDown currently. They really can't be turning Karrion Kross right now. I don't know what the fuck you do with the guy. He just keeps losing. And again, I love AJ. I'm all for AJ being built up. I know people, and myself probably included, would complain if he was losing consistently. But again, you can't really have a feud between these two if AJ wins every fucking time. The babyfaces won every single match. So why is Karrion still involved with this guy? And it sounds like from that Disciples comment of the pre-match vignette that they might be continuing this thing with more matches. And maybe a multi-man match. Who those Disciples would be, I really have no idea. Bobby and the Prophets are already doing their thing. The OC is their own group. What tag team can he recruit from SmackDown? Pretty fucking Deadly? I doubt it. Nor would I want to see that anyway. I mean, what tag teams does SmackDown have? That he could use? The Brawling Brutes? I really don't know. I like the match. I mean, there was a very bad botch in the middle. That botch just sucked. I mean, it looked like they had some miscommunication or just a mistimed spot there with like AJ flipping off the ropes, going for a reverse DDT. Kross fell. They tried to make up for it with a different move, and they fucked that up too. And these guys are not newbies. I mean, I'm not really sure what went wrong there. But beyond that, I thought this was a good match, the best of the three they've had so far, but the booking of Kross just, again, bewilders me. Nothing against AJ. I love AJ Styles. But again, if they're not building up AJ for anything, they couldn't have Kross win a single match against AJ Styles. That just doesn't make sense to me. So we had a surprise appearance. I don't think this was advertised in advance. Edge making a surprise appearance in Calgary on this show. Great reaction. We haven't seen Edge on SmackDown in like a month. He had a match with Grayson Waller after the Grayson Waller Effect segment on that show. And I was kind of wondering, what do they do with Edge from here? Do they give him a SummerSlam match? The answer was no. He wasn't at SummerSlam for the first time in a couple of years. He was at SummerSlam 2021 for the match with Rollins. He was there last year making a return. He was not on this year's show at all. And that's fine. They didn't really need to squeeze him on. They had a full card as it was. But I even said on Twitter a couple of days ago, what do we do with Edge going forward? The guy doesn't have a lot of time left. I don't think he's retiring next week in Canada. He made a comment about that last year, like, oh, around this time next year in Toronto, I'll retire. He's not retiring against Sheamus. Although Sheamus being the one to get him out of retirement and then being the one to put him back in retirement would be a nice story. But they haven't remotely teased that. Edge made it sound like elsewhere that he has a lot of time left on his deal as far as like maybe a year or so. I don't think he's done anytime soon. It would be interesting if they turn Sheamus next week because that's the match that they're doing. And like I said earlier, they advertised Edge for next week, and they just had him randomly show up here to announce his opponent, that being Sheamus. And he made the comment like, oh, it's weird that we've never had a one-on-one match before. It's really not that weird, though. Like, Sheamus made the mention of like, oh, I've been in this company for 14, 15 years, and we've yet to have a single match. It's really not that bizarre, though, because 9 of those years, Edge was retired. And there was never really an opportunity for them to have a match after Edge came back in 2020. Because they both... What has Sheamus even really been doing? I know he was a heel in 2020, but Edge feuded with Randy Orton for like a fucking year, and then he got hurt. And then he came back. And then in 2021, he was busy with Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan and Seth Rollins. It seems like they've always been on separate brands, and now they're back on the same brand. And then in 2010, Sheamus debuted on the main roster in late 2009. Edge retired in April of 2011. They never had a match at that point because they were both largely bad guys, or both... Yeah, they were both heels at the same time. And again, they were never on the same brand. I think they were both on the same brand and on Raw in 2010, but that was very brief, so I'm not surprised they haven't had a match before next week. But I'm looking forward to the match, and they gave these two a lot of time. I did think the timing was funny, and I'm not saying like complaining is a bad thing in this circumstance, but Sheamus just complained in an interview when he just vented about his frustrations, about how like he wished more people on the roster, himself included, would be given the same amount of, or at least a fraction of the time that the Bloodline does when it comes to developing stories and getting mic time and TV time, whatever. Because, I mean, Sheamus, he's not wrong. He's been on the show consistently over the last year under Triple H, and he's had a great run. But, like, they built him up for the match with Gunther, and he lost at Clash of the Castle. They had a rematch on SmackDown that he also lost. And then, soon after that, like, he really didn't do a whole lot. He was in the main event of Survivor Series. He lost that too. He did the thing with Drew where they teamed up, and that was great. So he's had like consistent direction, but he hasn't really won whenever it's mattered most. And he should have won the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania, which he also, again, did not, which was dumb. At this point, honestly, if LA Knight's appearing on Raw, why not have Sheamus appear on Raw and have him beat Gunther for the championship? I mean, honestly, at this point, why the fuck not? Who gives a shit? The brand split rules clearly do not matter. Why not? But anyway, so he complained in an interview last week that he wished more people got a fraction of the creative attention and storyline direction that the Bloodline does. And then sure enough, you're on SmackDown, he gets like a 10-minute segment in the ring with Edge, where it kind of felt like they were going off the cuff and kind of just loosely going along with whatever they were supposed to talk about, that being their match. They mentioned how Sheamus helped kind of get Edge out of retirement when Edge was on his, which is a shoot, by the way. They were on the Celtic Warrior Workout YouTube channel, Sheamus' YouTube channel, and they were going mountain bike riding or whatever, and Edge took a nasty spill. But he realized at that point, if I could take a bump like that, which is pretty fucking brutal, I think I could take a bump in the ring. And that led to him doing scans and getting cleared, which he was and whatnot. And then Sheamus also brought up that in 2004, I think he was going to quit the business or whatever until he had a conversation with Edge that convinced him to keep going, and then ending up in WWE a couple of years later. So they have a lot of history. I'm glad they're doing the match. It gives Sheamus something important to do. They don't have a lot of heels on SmackDown right now for Edge to work with anyway. Maybe they turn Sheamus next week. I honestly would not be against that. Babyface Sheamus is great, but at the same time, they need more heels on SmackDown, and he's not doing anything right now, so maybe Edge beats him next week. I mean, again, it's a fresh feud. It's not exactly benefiting anyone, but Edge has also worked with a lot of newer guys in the last couple of years. Like he worked with Waller last month. He worked with Balor for a while. The entire Judgment Day, Damian Priest. AJ's not a new guy, but he is new in terms of WWE. At the time they were having their feud last year. So it is a fresher feud. It's not like he's feuding with Roman Reigns again, or AJ Styles again, or Randy Orton, God forbid, again, something like that. It is something new. So I don't know if it's a full-on feud, or they just have a match and Edge wins and that's it. I don't know. Edge hasn't really put over a whole lot of people since he's been back. He lost to Balor at Extreme Rules. How many other people has he really lost to, though? He lost to Rollins on SmackDown in 2021. He lost to Roman Reigns in 2020 as well. Beyond that, he lost to Randy Orton in 2020. Like, he hasn't really lost a lot of matches. He's had a lot of matches since he's been back. He hasn't lost to a lot of people. So either give Sheamus the win or have him turn on Edge afterward and turn him heel or something. I don't know if the entire group go heel, the Brawling Brutes. I don't know. I wouldn't complain. So, yeah, we'll see where it goes next week. But I love this segment. I thought that segment was great. LA Knight on the show, I was kind of, not worried, but I kind of figured, he may not be on SmackDown this week because he was on Raw, had the back and forth with The Miz, which was probably the best part of the show. And then, so they had their segment, and I thought that was it for LA Knight this week after also winning the Slim Jim Battle Royal, obviously a week ago at SummerSlam. But no, he appeared here as well. He appeared here for a quick squash against Top Dolla. LA Knight feuding with Hit Row. They had their pre-show dark match segment before the MSG SmackDown a month ago. He beat Ashante the Adonis a couple of weeks ago, and he beat Top Dolla here. Quick squash, fine for what it was. LA Knight getting another mega superstar reaction. And it's not one of those things where I feel like, people occasionally get over, and, they're over for a couple of weeks. LA Knight's momentum has gradually been building now for months. Ever really since, March or April, he's been getting great reactions. And it's only gotten bigger and bigger by the week. But he comes out now, and you would think it's the fucking Rock or Stone Cold, and that's not an exaggeration. Very, very, very few people get the reaction that LA Knight does every time he comes out. Maybe Roman Reigns, Cody, and Rollins, and that's about it. Zayn and Owens are also up there, but Knight is getting, main event level reactions. I'm not saying he needs to be contending for a world championship tomorrow, but the guy, at the same time, is not getting any younger, and I would not complain if that was the case. I would say have him win the mid-card championship, but it seems like that's kind of in a state of flux right now. He's not beating Theory for that championship because Theory already lost the championship on this show, so that's not happening. But, I don't know. It's interesting. As far as the usage of LA Knight and where they go with him from here, having him feud with The Miz is perfectly fine. But I'm glad they're continuing to capitalize off these reactions that he's been getting. It's about fucking time. Again, the guy won at SummerSlam last week. That was on Saturday. He was in Detroit on Saturday for SummerSlam. He then flew to Raw on Monday, which a lot of people do not pull double duty, but he did this week. He went to Raw in Columbus, Ohio, I believe, for that segment with The Miz. He also hosted the Mets game on Tuesday, which he did a great job at. And then on Friday for this show in Canada, he flew into the show for a quick match against Top Dolla, getting mic work or getting mic time every single time. And he's gotten a great reaction every single time. And he's gotten himself over, which is amazing to see. So I'm loving the push of LA Knight right now. I'm glad they're putting him all over social media. They're having him make appearances like with the Mets game and stuff like that. They're having him do interviews and everything else. The guy is white hot right now, and they should not waste that. So I'm glad they're finally capitalizing on that as they should. And hopefully they have a bigger plan in place beyond a feud with The Miz, which is nice for now, but he does have a grander ceiling than a feud with The Miz going forward. The United States Championship on the line on this show. It was supposed to be Santos Escobar challenging for the title against Austin Theory, but then Escobar got attacked at the beginning of the show by Theory. And then he got attacked by Escobar again, heading out to the ring. Escobar got ambushed by Theory as he was walking to the ring, got his knee clipped. So the entire LWO comes out, sans Zelina Vega, I believe, and Adam Pearce, and they made the distinction that he can't compete, that he wasn't clear to compete. Taking his spot instead was Rey Mysterio. So Rey Mysterio took his spot, And Adam Pearce said, well, you're still going to defend the championship, so Rey Mysterio, get in there. Rendering the entire tournament to crown a new number one contender irrelevant by putting Rey Mysterio in there, who also, by the way, lost legitimately to an injury against Santos. Because remember, it was Rey and Santos 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago. And they had their match, and Rey got hurt, so Escobar won by technicality. But I think the plan, it's not as if their idea, and I had seen people say, oh, maybe the idea the entire time was to have Rey win, and this was always the idea to have Rey Mysterio win and beat Theory for the championship. I mean, I pitched that idea a couple of weeks ago. But from what I understand, Escobar was always supposed to beat Rey, injury or not. And it sounded like they were going to have a segment backstage later on in the show. Again, what that would have been, I do not know. But Escobar just willingly giving up his spot here to Rey Mysterio. And the thing is that he was happy for Rey, who ended up beating Theory, as I mentioned, for the United States Championship. He was happy for Rey. He gave him the LWO armband, so I am hoping the only explanation as to why this makes sense. And I love Rey Mysterio. He's had a great year. He's gotten really over. They finally know how to use Rey Mysterio. But with Santos, though, I mean, the guy was he was the number one contender, and this is not a legit injury. From what I understand, Santos is not actually hurt. So if he's not actually hurt, they must have done this for a reason. Why the fuck is Rey Mysterio beating Theory for the United States Championship? Rey Mysterio was great. He does not need a championship at this stage of his career when Escobar was ready. He's been getting over. He really should have been the one to take the title here from Austin Theory. Why Rey Mysterio? If it wasn't LA Knight, Escobar was the next possible person. Why is it Rey Mysterio? Well, the only other explanation is that they're planning to turn Escobar heel, which is what I said a couple of weeks ago. It's the only explanation that makes sense. And honestly, they probably should turn him heel. SmackDown needs more heels. LWO has been great. It served its purpose. It hasn't really been around for that long. But they need to move this thing along here. Have them, turn Escobar heel. Have him go heel. Take that United States Championship from Rey, either by cheating or whatever. And he'll be over, I would think, more over as a heel now than he was a year ago because he's working with established talent in Rey Mysterio. Now he has direction, which he didn't before. So if that's the direction they're going in, I'm on board. If that's not the direction they're going in, and they're just giving Rey Mysterio a reign as United States Championship, as United States Champion out of nowhere, then I'm not really sure what purpose this was supposed to serve. So I'm happy for Rey. At the same time, the top takeaway here is, at least Theory is not champion. It could have been the local fucking janitor. They needed to take that title off of Austin Theory. He has been booked terribly as United States Champion. He's had an awful reign. He was booked well enough in the first couple of months, and then it's just been all downhill since WrestleMania, ever since he moved to SmackDown. He's just gotten less TV time, no direction. He's not won a lot of matches. He's won a handful of matches, but not enough to really feel important, and he's never really the focal point. They needed to take that title off of Austin Theory, and I'm glad they did. But where they go from here with Escobar and Rey and whatnot has my attention, and I'm hoping Escobar goes heel. The closing of the show at the Bloodline. So Roman Reigns was on the show. There was that report that Roman Reigns got hurt at SummerSlam, and I mean, you would never know by watching the show. And I'm not doubting that he got hurt, but to me, it doesn't really matter. Unless the guy would be out for a year, it really doesn't matter if Roman gets hurt because he's not going to wrestle for a couple of months anyway. At the earliest he's wrestling is probably Crown Jewel, which they haven't announced yet, which is odd. I'm imagining they're doing a Saudi show in November. And if they do, he'll probably be on that show because the Saudi prince probably wants Roman Reigns on that show. More than likely, though, he will not be in action again until January for the Royal Rumble, or at least defending his championship. So he's probably fine as far as, is he hurt, is he not hurt, blah, blah, blah. He's probably hurt, but it doesn't really matter if the injury's not that serious. But anyway, so they had the whole fallout from SummerSlam with Jey, or rather Jimmy explaining his actions as to why he betrayed Jey. His explanation, the grand logic here was, and I said going into the SmackDown, they really needed to hit a home run here as far as why it needed to make sense, because that ending did not make sense. It fell flat with a lot of people, myself included. The explanation sucked. They attempted to explain it by having Jimmy tell Jey, I did not want the power to go to your head by you becoming Tribal Chief. He said that Roman Reigns became an asshole after he became champion and became the Tribal Chief, blah, blah, blah. And he's not wrong there, but he would rather Roman Reigns continue to reign as the Tribal Chief, have a stranglehold over their family, and abuse them and just make life miserable for them, than his own brother. And his own brother showed no tendencies of ever, going heel or becoming an asshole or whatever. He was defending Jimmy. The whole reason why that match happened at SummerSlam was because Jey was fighting in Jimmy's honor. And Jimmy was not in full-on heel mode here. I thought he might even go full-on heel, and it was all a ruse, and he was like, no, it's not out of jealousy, or it was out of jealousy the whole time, even though he said it wasn't initially. No, we didn't see that. He was kind of a Shades of Grey character. The best part of the segment was the fact that Jimmy did not realign with the Bloodline. And Roman said, oh, I owe you one, Jimmy, thanks a lot, blah, blah, blah. Jimmy made it clear he was not rejoining the Bloodline. That could still happen, but that would be very dumb if it does. That would make absolutely no sense. After everything that we saw with Jimmy and Roman as recently as a few months ago, for him to go back to the Bloodline and be abused by Roman Reigns would be very fucking dumb. I don't know. They seemed like a united front going into Money in the Bank, Jimmy and Jey knocking off Roman. He was content with beating Roman and opposing him on that show, but not Jey becoming champion. I mean, that's so dumb. It's stupid. I still don't buy into the logic. But my bigger question was how they were going to stretch this out until WrestleMania. That was the big report this week. WWE officials want to keep Jimmy and Jey apart. Not keep them apart, but wait until Mania to do the match. How the hell is that going to happen when Roman's barely around and you need a big feud to carry SmackDown the remainder of the year? That's still my question, because we still don't know. Jey, at the end of the segment, after laying out Solo and Roman and Jimmy, he laid out everyone except for Roman, or except for Paul Heyman. He just walked out and said, deuces, ooses, and said, I'm leaving, I'm out of SmackDown, I'm out of the Bloodline, I'm out of WWE. And he seemingly quit. He didn't say those words, but it made it sound like he quit. If he's back on SmackDown next week, this was all for nothing. It was a great angle, but again, I question going forward, what then carries SmackDown going forward? I mean, how do we book this? If Jimmy and Jey, they're saving that for down the road, which is fine, I guess, I'm not even really confident that program can carry SmackDown. We have a new United States champion in Rey Mysterio. That's a plus. But beyond that, though, what is there really to get excited about right now on SmackDown? The women's division is heating up. That's great. The United States Championship scene is interesting again. That's great. But even if it's a Rey and Escobar feud on the horizon, is that enough to carry SmackDown? The answer is no. I mean, I know they didn't really have Roman Reigns around when he was champion last year, that he wasn't around every week. But the Bloodline stuff was able to carry the show when Roman Reigns was not there. But if Jey's not there, if Roman's not there, and apparently none of the Bloodline people, Jey, Jimmy, Solo, Roman, none of them are even scheduled for SmackDown next week in Tampa, then where are we going with this is my question. Where are we going with SmackDown? Not just the Bloodline, but with SmackDown. With the Bloodline, it seems like we're headed for a four-way. That was kind of teased at SummerSlam. That was teased here. And I'm all for that. That sounds awesome. That sounds like a Rumble match, though. That sounds like a match befitting of the Rumble. You don't have to, I mean, honestly, I would do it at Crown Jewel. It doesn't really matter. But we need to move this thing along here and move on to the next chapter of the story and have it be a good one. But then what do you do in the meantime on SmackDown? There's no world champion. And they have a lot of talent on SmackDown. But can they find a feud to really build the brand around without a world champion? That is my question. And I will continue to question that going forward until they find that feud. It could be Rey in theory. Maybe it's Edge and Sheamus. I don't know. Maybe Edge is coming around now because they need someone on SmackDown to really be there weekly. I don't know if he's going to be on SmackDown every single week, but he's been around often enough in the last couple of years. Why wouldn't, be against that? So, I don't know. It's certainly not AJ Styles and Karrion Kross, I'll tell you that much. Maybe it's Io and Bianca, or Io and Charlotte, or Io and Bayley. I don't know. We'll find out in due time. I did think this was a great show, though. A very newsworthy edition of SmackDown. LA Knight in action, new United States champion, Jey Uso quitting the company, surprise appearance by Edge. A great SmackDown in Canada. And I'm already looking forward to next week as well. Thank you guys for checking out my review. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. SmackDown Lowdown reviews should also be up momentarily here on the channel, so keep an eye out for that. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.